MS Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences.
Hi students, title of the experiment is Preparation and Standardization of 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide solution. Aim of the experiment is to prepare and to know the exact strength of 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide solution. Chemicals required are potassium hydrogen thiolate, sodium hydroxide, distilled water and phenolphthalein. Apparatus required are conical flask, volumetric flask, beaker, burette, burette stand, 10 ml bulb pipette, analytical balance, butter paper and spatula. Principle involved. It is based on acid-base titration. Sodium hydroxide being a secondary standard, it has to be standardized using primary standard potassium hydrogen thiolate. The indicator used is phenolphthalein, which is an acid-base indicator, and the end point is appearance of pale permanent pink color. When all potassium hydrogen thiolate gets converted into sodium salt of potassium hydrogen thiolate, an excess drop of sodium hydroxide alters the pH of solution and phenolphthalein gives permanent pale pink color. Experimental procedure. First, for the preparation of 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide solution. Weigh accurately 4 grams of sodium hydroxide pellets into a 1000 ml volumetric flask. Dissolve in small quantity of water and make up to the mark with distilled water. Next, for the standardization of 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide, weigh accurately 2 grams of potassium hydrogen thiolate into 100 ml volumetric flask. Dissolve in small quantity of distilled water, then make up to the mark with distilled water. Pipette out 10 ml of this solution into a conical flask and add few drops of phenolphthalein as indicator. Titrate against given sodium hydroxide solution until a permanent pale pink color appears. Repeat the titration until concurrent readings are obtained. The results obtained are tabulated and the normality of sodium hydroxide solution is calculated using the formula N2 is equal to V1N1 divided by V2, where N1 is normality of potassium hydrogen thiolate, V1 is volume of potassium hydrogen thiolate solution taken, N2 is normality of sodium hydroxide, and V2 is volume of sodium hydroxide consumed. Finally, the normality of given sodium hydroxide solution is reported.
Hi students, the name of the experiment is Standardization of 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide solution. The aim of the experiment is to determine the exact strength of the given sodium hydroxide solution using the primary standard potassium hydrogen thiolate. Standardization of sodium hydroxide solution, it is an acid-base titration. The acid involved is potassium hydrogen thiolate and the base involved is sodium hydroxide solution, and the indicator used is an acid-base indicator, phenolphthalein. The chemicals required for this experiment are sodium hydroxide pellets. Sodium hydroxide is a secondary standard which has to be standardized in this experiment. potassium hydrogen phthalate. Potassium hydrogen phthalate is a primary standard which is used to standardize the secondary standard sodium hydroxide. Phenolphthalein indicator. Phenolphthalein is an acid-base indicator used in this experiment. And distilled water is used to prepare potassium hydrogen phthalate and sodium hydroxide solutions. The apparatus required for the experiment are spatula, butter paper, 250 ml beaker, 25 ml measuring cylinder, funnel, 100 ml volumetric flask, 250 ml conical flask, 10 ml bulb pipette, burette stand, burette, and weighing balance. Now let us start the experiment. The first step is to prepare 0.1 normal potassium hydrogen phthalate, which is a primary standard. Take the potassium hydrogen phthalate sample, butter paper and spatula. Place the butter paper on the pan and make sure that it is 0. Then transfer small quantity of potassium hydrogen phthalate initially. To prepare 0.1 normal potassium hydrogen phthalate solution, exactly weigh 2 grams. 2 grams of potassium hydrogen phthalate is weighed and it is transferred to your 100 ml volumetric flask using a funnel. So place a funnel over the volumetric flask and transfer 2 grams of potassium hydrogen phthalate over this. After transferring the sample over the funnel, add small quantity of distilled water to dissolve the sample. Stopper the flask and shake it thoroughly with less quantity of distilled water to dissolve the sample thoroughly. Once potassium hydrogen phthalate has dissolved in water, add distilled water to make up the solution to the mark. Now the solution is made up to the mark with distilled water. So this is 0.1 normal potassium hydrogen phthalate solution. So this is now transferred to a reagent bottle and labeled. This is 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide solution, which is prepared in a similar way by weighing 0.4 grams of sodium hydroxide pellets and dissolving it in 100 ml of distilled water. Before the titration, all the apparatus used in the titration should be thoroughly washed with water. Initially, burette, once it is washed with water, it should be rinsed with small quantity of sodium hydroxide solution. Before filling the burette with sodium hydroxide solution, it has to be rinsed with small quantity of this solution. Place a funnel on the top of the burette. Transfer small quantity of sodium hydroxide solution. Place the burette in a horizontal position and rotate it so that the solution comes in contact with all the part of the burette. and rotate the burette The nozzle of the burette should also be rinsed or washed with sodium hydroxide solution. After rinsing the burette, fill the burette with sodium hydroxide solution till the mark. After filling the burette with sodium hydroxide solution, rinse the pipette with potassium hydrogen thiolate solution. Take small quantity of potassium hydrogen thiolate and rotate it so that it comes in contact with the entire After rinsing the pipette, pipette out 10 ml of potassium hydrogen thiolate solution to the mark and transfer to the conical flask. Pipette out 10 ml of this solution up to this mark and transfer to the conical flask. Always do not blow out the pipette to remove the last drop. After pipetting out 10 ml of potassium hydrogen thiolate solution into the conical flask, add 2 drops of phenolphthalein indicator and carry out the titration. Before you carry out the titration, hold the conical flask on your right hand and the knob of the burette with your left hand using your thumb finger and 2 other fingers. Open the knob and allow the sodium hydroxide solution to enter into the conical flask and carry out the titration by swirling the conical flask. Carry out the titration until a pale permanent pink color appears. The end point is appearance of pale permanent pink color. The titration is stopped when the pale pink color is obtained. Note down the titer value. Always for colorless solutions, it is the lower meniscus which has to be seen, and to note out the reading, the burette has to be held in our eye level. Repeat the titration till you get a concurrent reading, and this is the way the standardization of sodium hydroxide solution has to be carried out. This completes the experiment, standardization of 0.1 normal sodium hydroxide solution.